So anyway, let's
Well,
talk about
yeah.
some wrestling though.
Yeah, so welcome everybody to the WrestleWatch podcast. Of course, this is the only podcast where we talk about free agency in the world of professional wrestling, and it seems like also electric vehicles. Um,
Yes.
yeah. So if you all are not familiar with this podcast, what we do here is we evaluate how movement is looking for various talent in professional wrestling who may or may not be currently a free agent. Trying to look at a 1 year window, and because of that, we are now looking back at 1 year windows as well to do a little bit of a report card, as it were, about the moves that did happen a year prior and say, hey, was this a good deal for everybody involved, for the promotion that the person left, the new promotion, and for the talent?
Yeah, and then I think the two we're looking at today, I think are especially interesting just because um they both are AEW talent.
Yeah.
They both came in with a lot of fanfare, and there was a definitely a situation where these were two talents that, I think Tony Khan in AEW was very, very clear that he was going to offer them the best price no matter what. And he was very insistent, especially with Okada. He was like, oh, I'm never going to get outbid for Okada.
Mm-hmm.
So we're a year out, and now we can kind of go back and look at how Mercedes Moné and Kazuchika Okada have done since they jumped to AEW from New Japan and WWE specifically.
Yeah. So, as the just for the record of what we're doing here with the report card, it's we look back at talent a year following them signing or re-signing. We're grading the decision for each promotion involved in the talent separately, and we're doing it from an A plus to an F grading scale. How about we start with one Kazuchika Okada, the man whose matches you walk out on?
That'll listen. That's what I do. Yeah, I did walk out on an Okada match at a recent Chicago Dynamite Collision taping. Um, in my defense, I didn't want to wait around for the last Metro train back to Joliet, which would have left at 12:30 a.m. and I wouldn't gotten back till 2 a.m. And I did have work the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no, I didn't. I lied. I didn't have work the next day because the next day was Thanksgiving. So
Mm-hmm.
I really have no excuse. I just I just was tired. So, but I have done that, and now that is what I do. I just walk out on Okada matches.
That's fair.
When I'm at All In Texas, and it's him versus Omega, that's time for me to go to the bathroom.
So, how about we first just get out of the way the expectations a little bit of Okada in AEW. What were your expectations with him coming over from New Japan?
Um, I think that, well, I'll start by saying this. I think his last year in New Japan, last year or so, he definitely felt like he was, I don't want to say coasting, but he was down cycled a bit, and it felt like he wasn't necessarily, uh, it wasn't, 2017 Okada. Um, and I think that when he came to AEW, even at the time, I think there was this idea that, he's ready to cash in, take a nice little contract. I don't think anyone was necessarily expecting him to go, as hard as he did, or as hard as he did in 2017, 2016, 2015. Um, but if you take a look at what he's done over the past year since he signed,
Mm-hmm.
um, he has been definitely doing more of a character work
Mm-hmm.
shtick than being, one of the greatest in-ring wrestlers of all time. I don't know that I necessarily had any of his matches over the last year on my, top match of the year list.
Yeah.
He's been solid. He hasn't been bad, but he just hasn't necessarily been at a level where, he's having some of the greatest matches of all time. And part of that could be that, he hasn't necessarily had a ton of high profile matches with, incredible talent. I mean, he had a few, and a few of those matches were really, really, really great. But as I said, a lot of it's just him kind of walking around, carrying the belt, doing his little bit where he drops a bitch on the screen, and that's it.
Yeah, looking back at the year that he's had, it is interesting that I yeah, so since he left New Japan, he's had 35 total matches, which I believe is actually kind of around what he was doing in New Japan at this point. Um, but the thing that's kind of different between what he was doing in New Japan at this point was that most of these matches are actually like singles matches.
Yeah,
22 of those matches were singles matches.
yeah. New Japan, they're always been very sparing with giving out the singles matches.
I would say the highlight matches were his defeat of Eddie Kingston, the Pac defense at Dynasty last year, which I believe you were in attendance for.
I was there for that.
There was the time limit draw in Wales, which I was attendance for. And the Danielson Okada match that was the TV for the 5 year anniversary of Dynamite. There were a couple of the ones that were in the Continental Classic that were pretty good. I think that the final was very good, as well as the two Hounds of Hell matches. I quite like those as well. Um, but yeah, it felt like that for a while he was kind of aimless uh, in AEW. It felt like that they were trying to just keep the engine running until it's time for him to have Kenny Omega in his life.
I think right there is kind of the big point. I think that everybody, as soon as he came in, everyone was thinking Omega Okada 5. Like that was everyone's thought process, and I do think that that would be my big knock on this reign,
Mm-hmm.
and just his rush, not his reign, not even necessarily the title reign, just his run. That it does feel like it felt like he was here to have his Omega match
Yeah.
on American soil. And it feels like every single thing he's done is just like filling time until that happens, which which is unfortunate because I would say a lot of the stuff he's done is good. I've enjoyed him in AEW. I don't think he's been incredible
Mm-hmm.
at all, but I think part of it is just because it's hard to really get invested when the thing we really want is, not the thing that's happening at the moment. And now that it's finally, being heavily teased and it's probably going to happen this summer, um, things may shift a little bit. I think we might finally uh, see a different opinion of his run.
Yeah. And I think that when we're looking at this from like the WrestleWatch perspective, we have to also look at then how does it go for New Japan? As you pointed out, towards the end of Okada's time in New Japan, he wasn't doing a lot much. He was kind of always up at the top of the card, but not really. It didn't really feel like he was doing much still, though.
No, he wasn't. And I think that was partly them trying to push new people.
Yeah.
Um, I think it was also partly maybe, Okada was winding down and maybe they already knew that he was leaving. Maybe he had already I don't know how I mean it was
It was
kind
in
of a
December when we first heard the rumblings. Yeah.
right. Yeah, we knew then, but we don't know how long if he set these people who knew that he
Yeah.
was going or planning to go or thinking about going. And for that reason, they may have already been down cycling him for that. Um, and since he's, and I think that was maybe the smart move for New Japan anyway. New Japan has always been a promotion that does its best. They've seemed to do their best when they have a big exodus.
Yeah.
Like when people leave, that's when like things take off.
Mm-hmm.
And they are forced to freshen things up. And and this year has been pretty. It was a pretty good start.
Mm-hmm.
I think New Japan Cup was a little disappointing, but I think that this year has been better than last year for New Japan for sure.
So when we're looking at it as just from the perspective of specifically Kazuchika Okada for grading purposes for New Japan, how would you say this past year has gone Okada-less? Like his place in the roster. Do you feel like that they've finally replaced him in his spot? Do you think that they could have used him still this year? What do you think?
I don't think they're missing him. I mean, New Japan is increasing their attendance. They're having some sellouts, which are things that they were not doing the last couple of years. Just after, granted, they're not all the way back from COVID. That's always a big part of it. Um, but they're doing as good, if not better, than they were when Okada was there.
Hmm.
So I don't think New Japan is missing him at all.
Yeah.
So I would say I would give them a solid B plus in terms of recuperating from the loss of Okada. Because if at this point, it feels like they didn't miss a beat.
Yeah, and I feel like it was a good decision by them to not have him come do any appearances since then yet in Japan.
Right.
He was not on the Wrestle Dynasty card at Tokyo Dome on January 5th. I think that next year he will probably reappear in Japan for a date, but like I think that
Mm-hmm.
like giving time for the new generation to crop up and have their moment and become new main eventers is important. And if you're just going to bring back somebody that just left that was your perennial main eventer guy, it doesn't really give them that opportunity.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that you know, as they say, you know, less is more.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need to bring him back right away. He wasn't needed on that dynasty card. That
Yeah.
was just the first one, and that was going to be interesting enough as it is.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Wrestle Dynasty. They need to stop having so many different shows with the
Uh,
word dynasty in it.
I realized that when they announced the show, and the abbreviation then was WD, which the problem with that was that Wrestle Dream exists, and then people were like, oh, well, it's Dynasty, and the problem with that is that, well, Dynasty is also a different show, so it became WDyne was the acronym for it, and it was just
Oh
very
God,
annoying.
yeah, that this is awful.
Yeah,
Let's be more creative with names here, people.
yeah. It should have been
So
Wrestle Empire. That's what they should have done.
yes.
See?
So then, so I say a B plus for New Japan and how they handled it.
Yeah, I think that's fair grading for that, and I think also though, like I would probably go more like a B, just because they were not. I felt like that they were a little bit caught off foot initially with the leaving, because it didn't feel like in the first few months that they really had established who was going to be next, and they didn't have those people ready right now. And I think at this point now they've really figured out who of the new generation guys are going to be the ones that they're going to build around. But I don't think that immediately the first few months after Okada left that they knew that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's a lot better now, I think. But yeah, those first few months, and it just felt like they were kind of spinning their tires a little bit, and they were like, I guess we'll try to let Zack Sabre Jr. happen.
Yeah,
It felt
and
like that
Shota,
was like the yeah
and they
that was
kept pushing Shota in a way that they probably shouldn't have.
not yeah, I feel like they were pushing him a little bit too early. But I don't think that they were wrong to push him, whereas I think a lot of people think that it was a mistake to try to push Shota. I think he's talented, and I think that some people just um, have their biases against him for some reason.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just think that they pushed him in the wrong way.
Yeah.
But you know
Um,
what? That's okay because they pushed Naito in the wrong way, and then they were able to, take a change direction with that, and we saw what happened.
yeah, and I think like also now they're finally reorganizing all of the stables. It gave them an opportunity to be like, okay, well, chaos shouldn't exist anymore. Finally, they got to that point. So if Okada was still there, chaos would still be a zombie faction.
Yes.
So as far as AEW goes, how would you grade them signing Okada, and how the year has gone for with Okada from their perspective?
Yeah, I'll be honest. It's uh I think it's unfair to say. I think no. I'm gonna restart over. I think they have not. I understand why they're doing what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and I understand that they were waiting around for Omega, and they're eventually going to get there. But having said that, it's hard to ignore the fact that they've essentially been spinning their wheels for the last year with Okada. They've protected him. Obviously they've really protected him. I think the heel turn right off the bat and having him join the elite was really interesting, and I really liked it. But having said that, as I said before, I can't ignore the fact that this does just feel like been a holding pattern year for him. So I have to probably go C minus
Wait,
for that alone
for AEW or Okada?
for AEW.
You think that it is a C minus signing?
I think it's a C minus presentation. I think in terms of their booking has been a C minus. In terms of the signing itself, I think it's a good. I mean, obviously, it's a great signing. He's one of the greatest wrestlers on the planet. But I mean, it's hard for me to say it's been a good signing for them if they're not using him properly.
Okay.
So I'm gonna stick with that. I'm gonna say it's a C minus. If they're gonna sign the guy and then they're just gonna do this for a year, I don't think that's a good thing.
Okay. Um, I think that it was a very important signing by them. Um, it was at a time when it seemed like momentum was going in a different direction for AEW. So and also to keep Okada with in that ecosystem of promotions seemed to be important. Um, so I think that regardless of what they've done with him since then, the thing is that like what they've accomplished by signing him and then what they've gotten out of him for what they've booked him for has been successful. Um,
Okay.
so from the perspective of AEW, I'm saying that this is I would give it an A rating.
Okay. So here is my counter to that. Okay, and this will be and this is going to be a little spoiler as well, obviously. So when you compare it to Okada to Osprey, Osprey, I would say, has been an A plus for AEW. Like, I don't think they could have hit it more out of the park. Like
Yes, yes.
he's incredible. They booked him incredibly well. He's an awesome signing. I think they everything about Osprey has been absolutely incredible. So I think that's an A plus. And then I just can't help but compare that to what Okada has done over the same time frame, and I can't go that high. I just can't. I'm so it's like for me, it's just he's a C, just because I don't think AEW has used him as well as they could have. Now, that's different from do I think this is a good move for Okada? I'll address that in a minute. Um, but in terms of just was this a smart move for AEW? Well, if this is what they're going to come up with, I don't know.
Okay, and then to then lead in, what do you how do you grade it as a move by Okada?
So for By Okada himself, I think that it's hard to deny that clearly he got an incredible deal. People have said that the rumors were that this was, you know, financially a great move for him. In general, even though he's working 35 matches, which is about the same, he's also not on the road as much. I mean, New Japan's road schedule is very rough. I mean, they'll do the thing where it's like they're on the road for like 3 weeks and then they get a couple weeks off. Uh, just flying in here and there for matches in AEW isn't quite as bad. I think that for that reason, I think that he has made a very smart decision financially. I think that they have protected him very well. Has he taken a loss yet, besides the tag losses?
Like in a singles match, you mean?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, he has.
To who?
Bryan Danielson.
Oh, yeah, that did happen. You're right.
And then
Okay.
he's had a time limit draw against Claudio as well.
Yes.
And
And then but he did win that. He did get that loss back at Wrestle Kingdom, to be fair.
and he also lost to Kyle Fletcher in the Continental Classic and had the draw with Daniel Garcia in the Continental Classic.
Okay. So he's had, but once
Oh,
again,
and yeah,
these are,
when I was talking about Bryan Danielson, I meant this year in AEW when Danielson was world champion. He
yes.
lost to Danielson.
Okay.
So
That's fair.
he has by my count, two losses and two draws.
Okay. And even so, I think that they've done a fantastic job protecting him. He feels very, very protected, and I think his title is prestigious. And I think that eventually, when they merge the two belts with Omega, that's going to be a big deal. I think that at this point, it's hard to see that that's not going to be the biggest match
Um,
at All In. at least in my view. But that also speaks to how much that match Omega Okada 5 is going to be built up and has been built up when All In's probably going to have tons of big matches. I'm very bullish on this show.
Um, I have a very different view of things, I think, from you on Okada signing with AEW.
Okay, go ahead.
Um, I think financially and all the scheduling things and things like that of that nature that you were discussing are very valid and positive points in direction for grading the decision. However, I think that he has no mystique in AEW. I think that they've dropped the ball with how you compare it to how Kenny Omega has felt since he's returned, and you look at any point in the last year with Okada never felt in the same way. And the thing that makes me like the comparison I'll make is one that Kenny Omega has made about what he wanted to seem like when he returned, which was Roman Reigns aura, which means not necessarily that you don't wrestle ever, but or your match quality is not exactly workman. But it means that when you come in the building, everybody goes, "Oh crap! Oh, that's him. It's him. He's the biggest guy here. He's the one that it makes sense that he's the world champion. You know, like just look at him. You know, that kind of feeling." And I think that since Omega has returned, he has that to T. They have figured out how to present him in such a way. I think that the Continental belt has become the least important belt in AEW and the most forgettable under Okada.
I would agree.
More forgettable than the TNT belt, because the TNT belt right now, some people will be like, oh, well, they're just, putting it on Collision and I can't see it. And like, I don't know that it exists. One, now about half of all people watching AEW are watching it on Max, where it's just one endless stream of shows. They don't see the difference between Dynamite and Collision. They just get reminded that they missed a show.
Right.
So I think that a lot of people's opinions about Collision right now is based off of the previous kind of how things were going with it. But the other thing with that is that TNT title storyline is every single week on Collision and being pushed by multiple storylines are kind of feeding into it. So you had the world title storyline with Cope and Mox, which was related then to FTR through Cope, which goes to Daniel Garcia and the TNT storyline. So there was a thread from the Dynamite show, even when Daniel Garcia or Adam Cole weren't on it, to the TNT storyline. So it feels like, and they've been telling the story of we keep on getting, there's a story going on with it. It's being featured very well, I think. Continental Championship is not Okada hasn't appeared since the last pay-per-view.
Yes.
And when he does appear, he just is like doing like some backstage, like pre-taped sit-down interview kind of a thing. And he has had not really much of a story with any of his defenses since the Continental Classic ended.
No, he hasn't. Like, what would you say has been a big feud for Okada since he got here?
None.
Yeah,
I don't think he's had a single rival directly since he's come into AEW.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think that's the biggest problem right now.
So, maybe Eddie Kingston, but that was like essentially like Okada gets the belt and then Eddie's gone.
Yeah, and that was once again that was largely based around the tournament.
Yeah, and then in the tournament, like there was a little bit with Fletcher that they kind of teased, but then it didn't feel like they delivered on that as well as they could have. And so I think that they've dropped the ball on making Okada feel important, and that's going to hurt the build for an Okada Omega match, because right now Omega is mega over. He is like, people talk about how Ospreay is like the guy, possibly the next big guy, and it's like you get Omega back, and you're like, oh wait, no, yeah, I remember Kenny Omega. He's the guy. I've never had that moment with Okada. I love Okada. I think that he's a great wrestler. But like him in AEW just doesn't have the same aura at all. So
Mhm.
I think that AEW has not done everything that they could with Okada. And for that reason, I think that that's why I'm saying with the grading for AEW, I'm saying that it was a good decision by AEW to get Okada. And even for the money that they're paying him, it was a fantastic decision by them. I think for Okada, he has to look at this year and say, well, what have I done? They just gave me a belt, and I just, make one appearance at a pay per view every pay per view, which, like, maybe that's what he wants. Maybe that's, great. That's good for him. But at the same time, it's like, you have to, consider, like, the alternatives when you're grading this for him. And I guess the alternative would have been going to WWE. And I think that I'm like, I'll be honest, I think that WWE would have presented him slightly bigger than how AEW has presented it. And we can also compare it to Mercedes Moné with that too, where it feels like Mercedes has been presented bigger than Okada.
Yeah, I
So
would say so.
so for
They've done, yeah, and we're gonna. I think that's a good segue because we'll go into Mercedes next. But yeah, I think it's night and day. I mean, it's funny because they're both presented in a very similar way, but they've for some reason it's just like Mercedes comes off way different in her presentation, and maybe we'll get into that and talk about that. And it could be that Mercedes doesn't really have anyone in AEW that's like outshining her.
yeah.
Maybe Tony Storm, but it's like they're not. They're like parallel to each other. They're
Well,
not like so it's different.
and I'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to Mercedes because I have a thought about how they've dealt with her having quote unquote the B title.
Mm-hmm.
With Okada, it feels like he has clearly. It's like it feels clearly that the hierarchy is World, International, Continental, TNT. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
clear that the Continental is not on the same level as the International title.
You know what it kind of reminds me of? It feels like right when they introduced the TNT title, and there was this, and Cody especially was pushing this at the time, where they were trying to kind of push this thing where like there isn't a hierarchy in the
Yeah, this is the
titles. All
one
the
B.
titles, yeah, all the titles are the important title. It's just that yeah, they're one B, one C, one D. I think they're trying to do that, and I don't know that they're being super successful with it.
It
Uh,
feels like that they could have just then made like the Continental the TV title for the men's scene on Dynamite, and then the TNT the TV title for the men's scene on Collision. They could have just done that then.
yeah. But I do think they've been successful with it in the women's division. But we'll talk about that in a
Yeah.
little bit.
So if you were to grade the decision by Okada and how he has been used over this year, what would you say for Okada?
So we're talking about how he's been used.
What his decision to sign with
Oh,
AEW,
I think
all those
honestly,
kinds of things, all wrapped up from the Okada perspective.
I would go B plus. I think that in general, for all the reasons we talk about, incredible money contract, money deal. I think he's done everything that he could have done in New Japan. I think that he's presented in a way that's much better than he would have been presented in WWE. I just don't see that WWE using him in the right way, or at least in a way that respects the history that and the prestige that he's had. I feel like AEW historically tries to, ignore everything that happened before. Like you take a look at even like Stephanie Vicaire or Julia right now in NXT. For the most part, they're just kind of, ignoring any accomplishments that they had before and trying to say, hey, you're in the big leagues now. This is all that matters.
Mm-hmm.
AEW is not doing that. They are absolutely acknowledging the history. They even did that with the Continental Classic where they said this was his whatever tournament win. They counted all the tournaments that he's won and factored that in. So I think that for Okada's legacy, he made the right move, and for financially, he made the right move.
I'd say it's like a B or B minus, just because at the same time, I personally think that he has not been presented as big of a deal as he should have been.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I would accept that as well. So I
Um,
think in general, I think we have the same
It's like
thought process
it's
on it.
a mixed bag with Okada. I think it's been generally positive for all parties. Like it's all above C, and C is like C's are degrees, so it's still passing, but it's not good.
Right.
And
Well,
I think that has generally been positive.
and I think the bigger point is I don't think that any of the other options that he had on the table would have been better. Like staying in New Japan or going to WWE. I don't think it. I don't think he would have been presented in a way better.
Yeah. I think it's arguable with the WWE, honestly.
It
Uh,
is. I mean, yeah, that's a we don't know. That's a big
yeah.
we don't know, but that's my hunch.
So how about somebody that we can do a comparison for how they were presented in WWE and
Yes.
also in Japan for that matter. This is going to be an interesting one to think about. We're going to talk about Mercedes Moné now. She originally left WWE in 2022, walking out of a creative meeting with Vince McMahon between her and Naomi when they were the tag champions about the booking of the women's division in WWE. Fast forward to 2025, not much has changed. Signed with AEW in 2024 after previously working in Japan immediately after leaving WWE. She sustained an injury in a New Japan Strong match, which was crowning the inaugural Strong Women's Champion. She lost the match to Willow Nightingale on a. They changed the finish for that match. She was injured. She sits in the box at All In London for the first All In or second All In. Doesn't. We'll figure out the numbers in a few years of how many all-ins there are. And or alls in, I don't know. So she was there. There was talk at that point of maybe she was going to sign imminently, but she was also injured. By the time of the end of the year there in 2023, it seemed like it was possible that she would in fact actually return to WWE, and then it just took a strong turn away from there very quickly in late in December 2023, where it started to come out that she was signing or had already signed with AEW. Finally, she debuted in March of 2024 at the Big Business special Dynamite episode at the TD Garden in Boston. That was after 272 days that we've been keeping track of her here on WrestleWatch. So I think when we're grading this, we're not going to look at Japan as a factor in this. I don't think, because she was, while she did have some time in Stardom, it was mostly as freelance, right? So I think that it would be unfair to grade it for them because also they're getting to still kind of use her
I
when she's
think
with AEW.
I think let's for our purposes, I think we could say leaving WWE and
Yeah.
going to what she is now.
Yeah. So how about we first look at it from the talent perspective? And we work our way through backwards, the opposite order that we did with Okada. Because I think that this is an interesting way to compare her to Okada, is looking at how she is, how her year is gone, and
Yeah.
how essentially how the time since leaving WWE has gone for her.
And I think that her specifically, and just being a WWE talent and what she has tried to do with her career, it's it's unique to WWE because I think one of the first things, and it's the big elephant in the room, is that when she left, she had to completely rebuild her brand
Yeah.
because in WWE, she did not own her brand.
Yeah.
She did not own the name Sasha Banks and what she was known as. So that alone, I mean, we don't know what her thought process is, but based off of what she tried to do, tried to branch out into Hollywood and still, tries to do outside acting commitments and things like that while being a professional wrestler, not having ownership of, you know, your name is a big problem.
Yeah.
So I think that was a big part of it. So when she left the company, she started the Mercedes Moné name, which she has complete ownership of. And for that reason alone, I think that was a very positive thing for her and probably something that WWE needs to start doing some reflection on because at this point, not having ownership of your name, I think a lot of people that's we're seeing that being a big problem with a lot of their talents. Some people are coming in there, and signing over the rights to their name, and that whole process is just, I think, is hurting them.
Like with keeping and retaining talent,
Yeah, I think so.
signing.
Because if you take a look at someone like, um, let's say, would I be surprised if AEW, not AEW, if during the negotiations with Mercedes Moné and WWE, would I be stunned to think that maybe like part of the negotiation was Mercedes getting the Sasha Banks name, the rights to that name?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be. In fact, I think it'd be very smart of her to try to get that. And I think that it's very possible that that was maybe a red line that WWE was not going to cross on.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that the company needs to start taking a look at, because I think that something like that is I don't think that that's necessarily something that they should be hammering home and trying to lock down. I think that allowing talent to have ownership rights over their names, they just got to accept that that's got to start being the norm, because they're already having it for a lot of their talent.
Yeah.
Like when Julia leaves, she's still going to be Julia, I imagine. When Stephanie Vicaire leaves, she's still going to be Stephanie Vicaire.
Yeah.
Um, but it seems like it's very inconsistent how it's kind of pushed across, because now we got Ricky Saints. So I don't know what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
but I think they need to fix this.
Well, back to Mercedes then. So you think that it has been a positive then for since leaving WWE for her?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I went off on a tangent there. But yeah, I think that in general she now has ownership over her name. She has ownership over her character. So before we even talk about how her run has gone, I think that's the first thing.
Yeah.
Now, she has she started off kind of rocky, and it wasn't her fault, because her matches were a little, she was still feeling her feet in Japan, and then obviously she got injured right off the bat after her with her match with Willow, and
Yeah.
then she had to drop the title, which was something she obviously was not planning to do. And then she came back eventually, and then she came back kind of slowly, because she signed with AEW and then couldn't wrestle for like 2 or 3 months because she still wasn't cleared.
Well, it's even crazier than that because it appears that she had signed with AEW in December of 2023. And
Yeah,
then she didn't debut until March. So that was 3 months. And then she didn't wrestle until May.
yeah, it's which to me maybe speaks more to the fact that AEW really, really wanted her, and they really, really wanted to lock her down,
Yeah, they
and
wanted
were
her.
willing to do that.
Yeah, they were willing to pay her for a few months of not wrestling.
Yes, which I think speaks to how much they valued her. And looking a year back, and we'll talk about this a little bit more with AEW booking, and clearly they did. Because now then you take a look at everything Mercedes has done since then, because I want to focus on that. She's walking around with 4 different belts.
Mm-hmm.
She is presented as a world killer.
Yeah.
She doesn't lose, like, ever, and she's incredibly over, and and every single person that she feuds with is getting more over because they've worked with her, whether it's Harley Cameron or Chris Statlander or
Willow.
um or Willow. Like, she is elevating the division, elevating herself, and bringing up all these people with her. I think more than anything, like Mercedes Moné. Say what you will about Tony Storm. I'm enjoying the Tony Storm stuff, but I think Mercedes Moné has done more to elevate the women's division than anyone else on this company. In this company, I think that, and I think it's helped her brand, because now she's elevating Mercedes Moné in a way that uh, she maybe wasn't being elevated in WWE, because
Yeah.
she was constantly feeling relegated, pushed to the side. And there was even rumors that, I think Zarian kind of talked about this, that, you know, there was people in the company that felt like, well, we have uh, Bianca Belair, who could just kind of do what Mercedes Moné did, and they like her more because she's more of kind of that physical image that they would like for a WWE superstar.
Yeah.
So for that, I mean, just based off that alone, it's like it made a lot of sense why she would leave because I don't think WWE necessarily valued her anymore,
Yeah.
at least not in the way that she truly is valuable.
I would also say, in addition to what you were saying about that she's done more for the women's division than anybody else, I would say that she's done it a lot for internationally, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Like one example is, I would say that it's not too crazy to say that she got Stephanie Vaccor a contract with WWE.
I think that's very easy to say.
She like Stephanie Vaccor, where she is right now in WWE, is a direct result of Mercedes Moné. Like not like like she called up Paul and's like, oh yeah, like no, nothing like that. I mean like that performance and that storyline and all those kinds of things, she made Vaccor.
She did. Yeah.
And I think that similar happened with Hazuki. That match, I think that kind of has pushed Hazuki a lot. I think that the Momo matches have pushed Momo very well, and elevated her a little bit in stardom as well. So yeah, and I think that like the fact that now she did one indie date with House of Glory, and it drew eyeballs.
Yeah.
Um,
And going back to the Hazuki match, I think that lit a fire under her because once that match happened, a switch flipped, and then she's been a lot more consistent with her matches.
Yeah, I think that like there's the early phase of her time in AEW is like there's some interesting matches like the Vaccor match, the Willow defeat, the Momo match at Capital Collision. One of the Sheeta matches was pretty good. The other one was I would say disappointing is the best way of putting it. Not bad, but just as a Sheeta stan myself, and as all good people are, you see that match and you're like, yeah. But then the Momo match happened around the same time, and then after that, yeah, and the Hazuki match and Statlander happened from there, and it was like, yeah, it started to feel like she's starting to click a little bit with what she wants to do. Yeah, so I think that she has been very successful with what she has done. She's established a brand around her. People now think of her more as Mercedes than they do as Sasha, I would say, unless you're like a purebred fedonista. I think that most people nowadays think of her as Mercedes. Just say Mercedes, and
Yep.
like when somebody says Mercedes and they're talking about wrestling, they just think of her. Um,
Yeah, and that's going to soul it. I think, and that's impressive because I feel like Sasha Banks is such an embedded brand for her.
yeah, like
Whereas, like,
she was a WrestleMania main eventer.
yeah, it's not like FTR when they were the Revival. Like, most people don't even remember what their names were in NXT anymore.
I get
Uh,
confused because one of them was Dash, and then now it's Cash and Dax, and it makes it very hard to remember which one then was Dash, unless it
yeah,
was like one of those things from like Star Trek Voyager where they merged the two. I don't know.
pretty much. Yeah. So they've done a really good job with that. So I think,
Yeah. And
if we're talking about,
and
so
money
what,
too is another thing, right?
oh my, yeah, I think that's probably the biggest aspect is that she was the highest, and she might still be, she probably still is the highest paid woman in all of professional wrestling.
Yes, because the Charlotte re-signing happened before Mercedes got her contract.
Yes.
And
And then it was reported that
Mercedes
Mercedes
was
was the
bigger.
biggest.
Yeah. So, and I don't think that. I think it's possible that Becky Lynch and the contract, I guess, with her apartment complex, because we haven't seen her since then. Uh,
Hmm.
I think that her contract is probably around where Charlotte's is, but I don't think that WWE has given her Mercedes level contract.
I mean,
Um,
yeah, it's hard to say. It depends what Becky was threatening to do. Also,
I mean, like, well, by the fact that she has just disappeared from WWE TV for like the past almost year now, and that she's been sitting home having fun with her daughter for the past 4+ months, just being paid to do nothing. Like, I think When we review Becky, when it gets around to that time, I'm gonna be like, this is the best decision in the world. She sat out for like a year and got paid big bucks just to do nothing. That's great. She could just say no to it. She can Hogan things. It sounds like oh
Maybe
great.
she literally went in there and said, "I want Mercedes contract down to the T." So she got hired and then got to sit at home for 6 months, like right
Well,
off the bat.
and I mean, she it sounds like that she's been being able to say no to creative pitches, or it sounds like maybe the women's booking in WWE is really bad right now and they don't know what they're doing. But that's another story. That's going to be part of our grading of WWE on this.
I,
So let's just grade Mercedes on
okay.
this.
Well, one more thing. So I'm
Yeah.
expecting Becky to demand that she have a puppet made after her
Oh yeah.
because Mercedes got that, so she wants everything
I got
Mercedes got.
I gotta say, and that came out recently that the Harley Cameron puppet idea was parallel thought processing by Mercedes and Harley at the same time. They went to like Mercedes was like, I see that do the ventriloquism thing. What if you did a puppet? And Harley was like, I was thinking about doing a puppet. And then they did the puppet. So like that was like both of them at the same time had the same idea. So like it's just unsounding to me to see something like that. And I think that I can see the character work that's happening in the women's division and elevating it throughout with things that are not just Mercedes being on screen.
Yeah.
And the work
It's-
rate has gone up as well
yeah.
at the same time, and the time that women get on TV, and that they're actually getting main event slots on TV, and that they're getting more than one match on pay-per-views, and having matches be the longest ones on pay-per-views for women. Like the women's match, what was it? Mercedes versus Stat, I think, was the second one, I believe, was the longest match on that card. So like we're in a very new era, and it's because of her. I have to
Yeah.
say. So if I'm
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
and we're recording to say we are recording this the day after the Charlotte Tiffany
Oh
Stratton promo on
God.
SmackDown,
Word.
which
That
Charlotte,
was
I always say go Gophers, but it sounds like your husbands all say go divorce or something.
it was that you might be have a good record in the ring, but in the out of the ring you are 0-3. Got him.
Yep.
Oh my
This
God, that
is
was like it was painful. Like I want anybody that thinks that Mercedes is just mid-Sadies to go and watch that,
yeah.
and then watch
So
anything Mercedes does.
so to answer your question, I would go a solid A for Mercedes
I think that
making this move.
I think it's an A+ for a Mercedes proper.
Yeah.
I
I would
think that
accept
this
that.
is one of the most slam dunk things for an actual individual talent from their perspective that we've seen so far on this report card series. Like
Yeah.
for her personally, she has created her own brand. She's getting mega bucks, and she is being elevated in a way where this is the thing that I'm going to say. Now we can transition into grading it for AEW. I think that this has been an unbridled success for AEW because they now have somebody that is elevating the TBS title to feel like it's the world title. In a positive way, not in a the world title is the secondary title. No, in a like this is the 1B belt. You want to get this belt too. Athena, you're you're the ROH world champion, but you want that belt. Mayu Otani, you want one of her belts. Like all these people want to go after Mercedes, and like that's fantastic for AEW's perspective, I would say.
Well, and not only that, I think that one of the consistent since AEW started, the consistent criticisms of the company was always, oh, they only have one women's match a
Yeah.
show, or the women's division isn't as great. WWE has the better women's division, and this has been the first year where I think most people would definitively say it's the opposite now.
Yeah,
That AEW's women's division is better.
I would say other than NXT, and the funny thing with NXT is that, like, well, one of those people essentially got signed off the back of Mercedes, and the other one was somebody that I think was supposed to have a match with Mercedes, and then just didn't happen with Julia.
Yes, and
So
it's the thing, they're building. NXT is largely built on the back of these outside foreign talent.
Yep.
Which I think once again is another question of how effective this performance center is actually being.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, even if you putting NXT aside, I think most people would say it's at least AEW is at least on par with NXT.
At least on par with NXT. And then I would say, obviously, I think it's been far better of a product than the main roster women's division for WWE. I think that like Liv Morgan has like really shown out and improved over the last year or two, but I think other than her, there and Rhea, there's not like a lot of super bright spots. And Io Sky, there hasn't been like a lot of other super bright spots on either any kind of definition of performance or booking or anything with the women's division in WWE when compared to AEW's over the past year.
Yeah. So I guess the next question would be, how was this for AEW in terms of a signing?
Yeah, like how do you think that this decision to sign Mercedes has been for AEW?
I think this is an A+.
Yeah.
I think this one and Will Ospreay were like probably the best signings the company's ever made.
Yeah.
You could maybe, I still honestly, I mean, this is a controversial opinion. I still think there's maybe an argument for CM Punk.
I think that he was an A+ signing, and I don't care for people to. I don't care if anybody will question me on that. It was an A+ signing.
Yeah, I think even now, it's like knowing what happened. Like if you were to go to Tony Khan and say, "Hey, you get the choice to knowing what happened, you get the choice to either keep everything exactly how it happened or don't sign CM Punk." I think he's saying keep everything exactly as it happened.
I think that it's possible when you consider that on the same pay-per-view where Punk's first match in AEW happened, that we also had Danielson and Cole debut. I think that there is an argument that you could have just done the same thing but with Danielson, but that ignores like the whole like, oh yeah, he's been gone for 7 years, blah blah blah, cult stuff of CM Punk.
Yeah, but either way, for Mercedes, A+, either one, I'm fine with that. Yeah, I think it's been phenomenal.
Yeah, I think that AEW has to look at this and say like, wow, we are paying her possibly the highest salary on the roster, but like what we're getting in return is the women's division now everybody loves it. Like, and we're getting somebody that like she's going and people outside that are not wrestling fans know who she is and they see her and they're like, oh yeah, that's what she does. Oh yeah, I can check out AEW.
Yeah,
like it's great. It's great for them. Yeah, I think that the only thing that is close, even approaching that is Big Boom AJ for AEW of a signing.
Yeah, and the other thing is Mercedes, I think appreciates the street cred of like having all these indie belts too.
Yes,
just her personally.
Yeah.
So, and I think that alone. They've done because they've done this. They've done a good job of making the TBS belt and the world title feel just as important.
Yeah.
But to be fair, the TBS title has always been like really presented strongly in AEW since when Jade had it.
I would say that since the TBS title was introduced, that has been presented better than the world title.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
Hot take.
And and the Tony Storm stuff, it's really, really popular. Some people, it's a little. It took a little while. Like for me, it took a little while.
I think
it's been phenomenal.
I think that when they realized that she was essentially a face, and the crowd was not going to boo her, once they figured that out, the switch flipped on the reign. And then from that point forward, now I think the women's world title feels more important than the men's world title.
Yeah, and the other thing is they've decided, oh, she could do this shtick and
wrestle
and have good matches. It's like, oh, let's actually have her have good matches, and then suddenly people are all on board.
Yeah, we don't have to do 60-minute time limit draw 80s match style stuff.
Yeah, and constantly going back to black and white in the middle of the match.
I thought that was fun. Okay, so how about we look at then grading WWE for this decision to let Mercedes walk? I guess, should we look at it from 2022 of her walking or not? How about we look at it from December 2023 not being able to get her back?
Yeah, I think just not signing her is a
yeah,
good place to look at
let's look at it from December 2023 onwards.
So you can argue it was a bad decision in the sense that I think that the perception it hurt it I think it hurt them, but it ultimately it didn't really matter that they don't have her. Maybe they're right in the sense that it's like we really don't need you. Um however, I would even go I'll go a step further. I think that not only do they not need her, I think that from a business standpoint, they probably didn't want to blow up their labor budget because they probably knew they would have to really make some shifts in how they operate in order to keep her because the amount of concessions that AEW likely gave her in order just to sign her, I think those are things that WWE were not willing to do and it would probably have a ripple effect throughout their entire labor budget. Um, now, I want to preface this. I do think that wrestlers should get paid, but I understand why WWE didn't want to do that. And ultimately, I don't know that her being there would have made any big difference. And maybe it would help the perception of their women's division, but ultimately, I don't know that they care. So I think that for them, I mean, it's hard to sit here and say that since Mercedes signed that it was a bad move because WWE has been very very strong business wise. They were selling tickets since she signed really really well. They were drawing really well. So I don't know. I think I'd say it was a B plus move on their part to let her go.
I will temper it slightly just because it's hard to judge because they I guess they haven't needed her. However, I think that they do need her at the same time. Like
Mm-hmm.
it feels like that the problem in WWE with the women's division is not talent or lack thereof. It is booking and focus. And that they just seem to not care about the women's booking at all anymore. Like they introduced two mid card titles just to give token mid card titles. It seems um,
Yeah.
and it makes it feel like it's the same thing that she was complaining about before when she left about how the women's tag titles were like essentially like toys that they were having them lose matches that were not for the titles and so and it's just like they were being hot potatoed and being used as fuel just to do rivalries between women that are holding the belts and like it was just a mess. I think that the women's tags have improved since then, but not by much. And so yeah, when grading WWE's decision, purely just their decision not to sign Mercedes, I don't think that her being in WWE would have been a silver bullet of, oh yeah, now the women's division is fixed. Like I don't think that's the case. I think that the issues with the WWE main roster women's division are not talent based. So based off of that, I would say that I'll give it a B minus just because I think that um there is the perception of, wow, you couldn't get her back.
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
lost this person and look at what she's doing now over there. So I think that B minus is where I'm gonna sit on it.
I think that that's fair.
So that's
Yeah.
been that's been our report card.
Yeah.
Um,
We do have a couple talent jumps that we need to talk about or talent changes from our votes. So I think we're going to get into that now though.
yeah. So if you're watching on YouTube right now, you can look at what the tier list was from last week, our professional wrestling free agency tracker. If you're listening to the audio version of this, don't worry about it because it is all going away in 3, 2, 1. First up is Kevin Knight, who has signed with AEW. He was officially announced as All Elite. His first match that he did back with AEW, he just was billed as with New Japan, but then after a match with Jay White, which it seems like Jay White might have gotten injured from that match, he was announced as being signed by AEW. It was reported that WWE wanted him to try out with the promotion before even discussing contract terms. I think that that's the biggest part of this whole story was that Kevin, when leaving New Japan, wanted to he wanted to get a contract with the U.S. promotion. He wasn't really caring about staying in Japan. Um, and he wanted to talk to WWE, and WWE were like, "Oh yeah, you had to try out at the PC." Like, well, now he gets to he gets a pay-per-view match with Will Ospreay instead. So,
Yeah. Once again, this is what we're talking about when we say this company needs to kind of reevaluate how they're handling certain things because they do not. It's like sometimes they just don't realize that they don't have the luxury to do this stuff anymore.
yeah,
Like you're throwing up these barriers to get talent that don't need to be there in the first place. Like
yeah,
know who Kevin Knight is. The
yeah.
people who are signing these people, they could look at him and see what he's doing. They don't need to do that.
They could call up their close partners at TNA and say, "Hey, what do you think about him? Because he's been wrestling for you for a while."
Yeah, like it's almost a thing where they want to like see. I think it's a negotiating tactic on their part where they want to try to humble him
Yeah,
and make him like come to the throne,
yeah,
grovel at my feet before we even consider you, just so that they make sure that they have the higher ground.
yeah,
And I think that this is something that he was smart to just kind of do a pass on because now when he finally ends up when his contract is up, he'll be in a much better position.
yeah. I think regardless of how long his contract is, all those kinds of things, I think that he's going to be in a very good position because, yeah, his first thing that he's going to do in AEW is have a match on a pay-per-view with Will Ospreay.
Yeah.
Like even if he's going to lose, obviously, because Will Ospreay's he's probably going to win the Owen Cup, I think.
But I mean, listen, he could have been this weekend. He could have been, showing Shawn Michaels that he knows how to do a back bump or something like that.
Yeah, he has to go to arm drag class again.
Yeah, yeah, take a bump, go. Yeah, and then go to promo class where we just watch Jake the Snake promos on the WWE Network for an hour.
Yeah, we're gonna see what they wind up doing with him. I think he could fit well into like the TNT kind of scene. It's interesting that his gimmick seems to be the continuation of intergalactic jet setters. I think it's possible that maybe they are like, hey, and he's going to be in the best of the Super Juniors. He was just announced for that. So it's possible that maybe I don't know if they'll sign Kushida, but it's possible that maybe they're, will do bring him in for some tag work with Kevin Knight. But like, I think they're going to push Kevin as a singles guy.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that'll be, I think he's in a great position. Like he just lucked into this incredibly great position.
Yes. Yeah, I do agree with that. And yeah, I'm trying to find now the list for the best. Yeah, Best of Super Juniors has some interesting names on it that is I think interesting for us here on WrestleWatch to consider. There'll be Ninja Mac is on it. Kevin Knight, Draken Dia is in Best of Super Juniors this year. Nick Wayne is doing it.
See, I hadn't even looked at the Best of Super Juniors bracket yet. That's good.
So
that's good to hear. All right, cool. All right, so I think he's a confirmed jump, obviously. So
yeah,
so he'll be being removed from the tier list. We had him as a toss-up, which we thought with all of these, it's like I think sometimes it's like we don't know who's going to get signed in this environment or who's just going to continue just floating around. So I think that was a fair thing to have him at.
Yeah, I think that we were thinking that there was still a possibility of him going just with TNA even.
Yeah.
Because I think that was the toss-up nature was. I think that we kind of figured that he was going for a U.S. contract, and now that's been confirmed from a couple of reports. But I think that the thing was that there was a chance that he would just stick with TNA as his U.S. option.
Mm-hmm. All right. So the next one that we'll talk about is one Malakai Black.
Yeah. There have been teasers about him for a couple of weeks now on SmackDown. I guess the rumor is that it's about him. It's not been confirmed that it's him. There's been no confirmation that he is actually signed yet with WWE, from what I can tell. What are your thoughts about him right now? He's currently as a likely jump.
I think he's going. So I would move him to a safe jump for sure. I think it's only a matter of time at this point.
I feel like it should stay as a likely jump, but I'm not gonna step in the way of you or our lovely committee about putting him in safe jump.
Yeah. So to say he will now be in safe jump. Yeah, I think I would be stunned if we don't see him in WWE by this summer. I'll be very stunned.
Yeah, I think that he'll probably be after Mania. They'll bring him out, and then
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he'll challenge for the U.S. title or something.
Yeah. I
Um,
assume that they're saving the big returns at WrestleMania for Becky Lynch and her puppet.
I hope if Becky doesn't appear at Mania, we got to really ask some questions here.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. Oh, well,
Like
I'll give her till like the Raw after Mania.
it's like it is the craziest thing. Like I think this is the craziest saga in WrestleWatch history, other than the Mercedes Moné one, of just this person is allegedly signed and being paid a crap ton of money, and we don't have any actual confirmation that she's signed. Like
Yeah.
real confirmation from her or WWE that it has happened. It is very peculiar for somebody as big as her to just disappear.
Yeah. So
Um,
speaking of more people were waiting to appear in WWE, the next one is Miro.
Yeah, we have him as a lean jump previously. There have been reports from a number of outlets that he went to WWE headquarters in Connecticut and has signed with the promotion. I think that makes it clearly we're going to put it up to safe jump, right?
Yeah, he's a safe jump. That's another one, or it's a matter of time. A lot of these we just don't have a lot to say. I mean, just because we got the reports and they seem pretty definitive what's happening. So yeah, I think safe jump for Miro is the right move.
And finally, we have Nikki Bella. This one is one that I think that we disagree on of how to think about her. We have her as a likely jump currently.
Yeah.
She has not appeared since the Royal Rumble on her podcast. She's been doing the well, you never know kind of stuff, which to me sounds like she was just brought in for the Royal Rumble, and that's the story.
That seems like what's going on. I still am like kind of 50-50 on it. I think she could come back and do something soon
Mm-hmm.
and maybe stick around. So I actually voted for toss up. Like I don't think it's a likely jump anymore. Like we had her a likely jump. I think that's too high. So I actually voted to bring her down to toss up, but I think that I'm the low man on this one.
Yeah, there was enough people within our committee that were feeling that due to the nature of her Mania, I mean her Royal Rumble appearance and all those kinds of things, that maybe it's just like he was brought in just for a Royal Rumble surprise. Um, in which case, they just don't want to like consider her as a talent that we're gonna look at on the tier list. Like regardless of where to put her on the tiers or like what tier to put her on, just saying like this is not somebody that we're gonna keep track of.
Yep. So we're taking her off the tier list,
Yeah,
which
and it's not as much like she's not notable or like that there's not a chance. It's just that like it's just so nebulous about what is happening. I feel like that's my perspective is that it's very nebulous about like, oh, maybe she's just like, doing like, I'm a legend and I'm coming to the Royal Rumble. Like we wouldn't put Trish Stratus on this tier list,
no. Yeah, you're right. And I think that that's fair. And I think that so it's interesting because now if we take a look at our new tier list, which we're going to read through right now, and safe jump, we have Hikuleo, Josh Alexander, Malakai Black, and Miro. So it's a decent number in safe jump, but we have nobody in likely jump now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just those four people we think are jumping, and then we don't really have anyone likely to jump, and then we just have three people in lean jump. So that's Ninja Mac, B Priestley, and Jeff Cobb. So I think we're getting to a point here where we may have a bit of a slow season for jumps.
Yeah, I think that, well, interestingly, so I will point out Josh Alexander is rumored to possibly be the wild card for the Owen Cup. So it's possible that he's going to be gone soon. Ninja Mac, as mentioned, is on the Best of the Super Juniors for this year, and he is listed as New Japan. for that. So
So we're keeping an eye on that.
we're keeping an
So
eye on that. Jeff Cobb, spoilers, might be staying in New Japan, but might not be. I won't say what happened at Sakura Genesis for people that didn't watch it, but something happened at that show that makes me think, hey, maybe he actually did re-sign with New Japan.
yes, I have not. I just woke up
Yeah.
and then pretty much logged on here to do this. So I don't know anything that happened on Soccer
I try
Genesis
not
last
to. I
night.
try not to make this a spoiler pod, you know,
Yes,
because
yeah,
for New Japan, because it's hard for people when we are doing it Saturday morning, and sometimes the New Japan show finished like a couple hours earlier, but like overnight. I know it's hard for me to keep up and watch it any bit close to live.
yeah. I
But
agree.
another. Just on that note, I just wanted to point out with Dragon Dia that he's listed as from Dragon Gate. Mao is listed as from DDT
Yes,
for the best of the
interesting.
Super Juniors.
Okay, that'll be something to keep in mind as well. All right, so then for our toss-ups, we have Michael Oku, Bishop Dyer, the former Baron Corbin, Cedric Alexander, Good Brothers, and Zaya. Lean Stay, we have Joe Hendry, Samantha Irvin, Matt Cardona, Alexander Hammerstone. And then for Likely Stay, we have AJ Styles, Mayu Iwatani, Danhausen, Alex Windsor, Beth Phoenix, Gabe Kidd, Indy Hartwell, Leon Slater, Persephone, Mariah May, and Soraya. A lot of Likely Stays in there.
Yeah, and I think that some of them might see some movement
Yeah.
soon. Like I think AJ Styles could actually be going up.
Yeah. And Soraya is a weird one too. Well, she's technically not with AEW now.
Yeah, but like from the perspective of like when we look at tier listing for this kind of period, usually it's like if she goes back to AEW, we would just have her go down the tier list in this kind of time frame. But
Mm-hmm.
also, I think right now that I still contend that she's just kind of done with wrestling for a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then for Safe Stay, we have Sari, Utami Hayashishita, Shinsuke Nakamura, Tam Nakano, Nixon Newell, Sami Zayn, Kofi Kingston, and Xavier Woods.
Yeah, not a lot to update on those, but I think some of them we will have updates on as the month goes on, like Shinsuke and the New Day, Sami Zayn, I think, and Tam actually. Yeah, so pretty much all of them, I think we'll have an update on by the end of the month.
Yep. So I think that's it for this week.
Yeah, as a reminder of our social medias, you can follow us on Blue Sky and Twitter, where we make sure people know that we are going live and have updates on the tier list. You can follow us on WrestleWatch.substack.com. If you subscribe there, you can actually submit nominations of talent for us to discuss and reevaluate for our free agency tracker here on the WrestleWatch podcast each and every week. And you can listen to us every week on YouTube and on your favorite podcatcher of choice.
Yes, that sounds all great. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up for the week. We will be back next week. We'll probably have some discussions on what happened after Dynasty.
Yeah,
Maybe some people will show up.
who knows?
Who knows? So with that,